Keith Lee, for a multitude of reasons, is among my favorite wrestlers walking the earth today. He's a big fella who can move faster than he really should, has a dynamic and fun move pool, he works stellar and exciting matches, has an excellent voice and cadence similar to that of the late great Dusty Rhodes, and he has also sent Adam Cole into the next dimension here. So why does this matter now? Well, frankly, I think AEW has somehow done an even worse job at showcasing his immense talent, and it's disappointed me to such a degree that I'm now coping and saying that his WWE days were the good old days. Which, to be frank, if we're scaling this in days, it's more like the good old hours, but that's still something to me. And so, I really want to talk about how incredible he could have and should have been in his runs in WWE. Because frankly put, I think he might just be in the conversation for the most wasted wrestler in WWE history. All that said, if you go on to enjoy the video, it would be amazing if you'd leave a like on this, and be sure to subscribe for more content like this in the future. For now though, let's talk about the most wasted wrestler in WWE history, aka he who is limitless, Keith Lee. Keith Lee originally signed with World Wrestling Entertainment in the summer of 2018, where he was offered a contract following an impressive showing against Cassius Ohno, aka Chris Hero, during WrestleMania Access. Prior to this, however, Keith made his mark on wrestling through working in Ring of Honor, Progress, Evolve, among other indie promotions. In his time on those indies, he worked with a cavalcade of stellar talent, ranging from guys like the Briscoe brothers to Zack Sabre Jr. In the ring, on the mic, he was a guy who, for all intents and purposes, would make for a stellar acquisition to just about any roster. So, of course, upon his aforementioned WWE signing, people were naturally pretty excited to see what he could do, especially given the critical acclaim the NXT Black and Gold brand was receiving at the time from the hardcore wrestling audience, a brand in which Keith Lee was set to make his splash in. That first splash would be a win over Marcel Barthel, aka Ludwig Kaiser, on August 8th during an episode of NXT. Despite a very solid match and seeming debut momentum behind him, Keith was something of a curious case, as despite showcasing some great talent in his rookie year for WWE, he would spend most of 2018 appearing on television sporadically without being featured as much as a talent of his caliber realistically should be. Oh yeah, and he lost to Lars Sullivan. Remember Lars Sullivan? Certain websites remember Lars Sullivan. Anyway, now that I reminded you of some of the worst times, let's talk about some hard times. As just as Keith was gaining some traction during his feud with Dominik Dijakovic, due to their incredible in-ring chemistry and matches, Keith unfortunately came down with an undisclosed injury in March of 2019. This would not only prematurely end his and Dijak's feud, but also derail the momentum Keith had finally been able to build after his on and off relationship with appearing on NXT television. Genuinely speaking, as someone who's watched all of their matches from those years, I would definitely recommend going out of your way to watch Dominik Dijakovic and Keith Lee matches, because those two are genuinely wrestling soulmates. And I hope, with literally all that I have, that we get to see them work magic in the ring together again someday. Me gushing about that aside, Keith was sidelined, and frankly, this put a major damper on the push he was seemingly getting. Mind you, injuries happen, and I know that, but man, we were eating so good every single week with those matches, I swear. I am a story first kind of guy when it comes to wrestling. The in-ring will always come second, but the stories the pair were able to tell in the ring were genuine magic. Okay, for real this time, I will stop gushing and get on to the next part, which comes around during late 2010 in the lead up to that year's War Games event, where Keith Lee joined Tommaso Ciampa's team alongside his former nemesis Dominik Dijakovic, as well as a surprise returning Kevin Owens to take on the Undisputed Era in a winning effort. However, while this was of course a win on paper, an arguably even larger win would be on the horizon. Well, not in the ring, but in his appearance as part of Team NXT during the 5-on-5-on-5 elimination match at Survivor Series 2019, aka the year NXT was the third brand. Except it really wasn't, but we had to beat that Tony guy, so this show moving to the USA Network really was a big deal, guys. Come on, we have to beat this guy. Speaking of big deals, this was genuinely one of, if not the single best showing Keith Lee ever got on the main roster, save for one moment, which we'll talk about later. Bro, in this match, Keith pinned Seth Rollins, looked credible as can be against the biggest dog of them all in Roman Reigns, and was the last man to be pinned on not only his team, but in the match overall, only falling to the aforementioned big dog, Roman Reigns. There was also this near fall from Roman, which was just chef's kiss, man. I loved it. The way Roman bumped off the Spirit Bomb had me feeling like we were gonna see some magic happen. Genuinely, just imagine if the ref's hand connected with the canvas for a 3 count there. Anyways, the real victory here was not only having a debut on the main roster, but a genuinely stellar one at that, where even in defeat, it raised his stock with the casual fans, as well as some of the guys in power backstage. So much so that Lee found himself winning a #1 contendership match in January of 2020 against Cameron Grimes, Damian Priest, and Dominik Dijakovic, which was extremely good. Especially when Lee and Dijak got to mix it up and play off their feud from the previous year. I could go on about their feud forever, I swear to God. Anyway, Lee would win and then go on to challenge the North American champion, Roderick Strong, where he would defeat the Messiah of the Backbreaker to claim his first championship in WWE on January 22nd. And listen, you know what else is in January. The 2020 Royal Rumble nowadays will likely live in some form of infamy with the recent allegations surrounding Brock Lesnar, but if you'll indulge me for a moment here, there is a moment in this match where Brock is waiting for the next guy to come out while simply standing in the center of the ring before Keith Lee's music hit, and he gets a sick pop from the crowd. He gets this incredible spot where he takes Lesnar off his feet and seemingly even gets the better of the beast, which makes him look legitimately like a guy who you could buy into being on par with him. He also then had a face-off with Braun shortly after, which led to them both being eliminated, but this all made Keith Lee look like he could be a main event player in WWE in all reality. And so, Lee from here would be in that golden era I mentioned before, where it seemed like his potential was finally being realized. In this North American title reign, he would defend the title against his longtime rival Dijak in a banger match at NXT TakeOver Portland, as well as against a heel Johnny Gargano who was aligned with The Way at the time in a match at TakeOver in Your House. Lee was rolling and quickly making it known that he was a top guy in NXT, but there was only ever going to be one way to become the guy in NXT, and that was to go through and beat then NXT champion Adam Cole. The promos, the interactions, and everything leading up to their winner-takes-all match on July 8th at the Great American Bash was something really special. But for it to stick the landing, it could only end one way. Keith Lee and Adam Cole put on a great match before it all ended with a Big Bang catastrophe as Lee picked up the win and became the first ever man to hold not only the North American Championship, but also the NXT title at the same time. Despite it being during the pandemic, it was genuinely such a feel-good moment in front of a handful of people in person, but before loads watching at home. Well, as long as you weren't spoiled on Twitter because Sangha from Indus Share posted the result before the taping even aired, I'm not salty, you're salty. Anyway, this was a time that as a Keith Lee fan, I fondly remember. And because of that aforementioned hardship and simply being booked on the show that I mentioned previously, myself and many other fans of Keith Lee felt simply vindicated in this moment. Finally, the man realized his potential and did something incredible with it. However, this would be rather short-lived, unfortunately. Keith Lee would basically just give up the North American Championship because he felt like other people should be able to fight for it, which I guess fair enough. I wouldn't have done it that way, but maybe that's just me. And with the NXT title being the only one in his possession at this point, and with there being a hot and upcoming talent in the form of Karrion Kross, who by all rights, I will say this, his NXT run was incredible. His main roster one, not so much, but his NXT one genuinely was great. So with Karrion Kross, again, super hot right now, coming in, it unfortunately felt like the writing was on the wall for Keith Lee's title reign, so unfortunately, he dropped it to Karrion rather quick. And once again, as someone who watched him at the very start of NXT to struggle to get booked, to now be the NXT champion, I was hoping for more for him. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of felt a little bit cheated as a fan with him losing the title as quickly as he did. However, it did seem at the time that this was done with the best of intentions in mind for Lee, as he would move to the Raw brand following him dropping the title because he made some great impressions at Survivor Series and the Royal Rumble. So it seemed like they had a solid plan for him. They even inserted him in a mini feud with Randy Orton where he would face the Viper twice. Once in a match that got called off after Drew McIntyre interfered, and the second at Payback, which Lee won clean. Again, this is Randy Orton, and with a win of this caliber, he was very quickly positioned to be able to mix it up with several top guys, and overall was generating a good reaction from the crowd. From here though, he would sort of slowly become part of the furniture, so to speak, as he worked his way into the championship picture in both the WWE title and US title divisions respectively. However, he never really had much opportunity to show his full potential, as in he never got a ton of time on the mic, as well as his in-ring style was toned down some to fit the standard for big men in WWE. Remember, this was when Vince was still in power and he had a certain vision for how big men would perform. This, generally speaking, really hampered his main roster run and prohibited him from doing the things that got him to the dance in the first place. A wrestler like Lee could easily fit a mold of being just another big man in WWE, sure, but the reason why myself and many others gravitated towards person was simply because he was so different than most big men. Also, just because I feel the need to mention this, they made him wear a singlet under his shorts when he came up to the main roster for whatever reason, and people really didn't like that. I kind of low-key did. I don't know. I thought it looked nice. Anyways, he quickly just became another guy who came up from NXT. Oh, and also after gaining that little bit of momentum he had gotten from beating Randy Orton, he was unfortunately removed for a scheduled US Championship match against Bobby Lashley due to injury. Additionally, while out on injury, Lee caught COVID-19, which led to him having a health scare as he suffered from heart inflammation, and because of this, he would be kept out of action for 5 months. And his return came with a lukewarm reception, as he was given the nickname Bearcat as an homage to famed wrestler Bearcat Wright, who was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame's Legacy Wing in 2017. However, this run would be unbelievably short-lived, as Lee would be released from the WWE on November 4th, 2021, with the company citing budget cuts as the reason. Honestly, that announcement broke my heart, because frankly put, Keith Lee was and is one of the most exciting big men in the history of wrestling. The way he moves, his cadence, everything about him screams that he is something truly special and unique to himself. It doesn't help that he went to AEW and has practically done nothing of note aside from win the tag team titles with fellow WWE alumni Swerve Strickland before the pair lost the titles and they decided to feud for what felt like literally forever. Listen, call it cope or whatever you want to say. I'm personally of the belief that Triple H really has a stellar mind for talent. And when Keith's contract in AEW comes up, I will be hoping, coping, and praying that he scoops Lee back up, because I know he'll put the guy in a spot where he can succeed. Also, his wife Michin works there, so I reckon that would probably just be easier for them both in general. And well, I just really hope to see him back. My point here is really that Keith Lee should have been incredible in that first run with WWE. I truly believe that more than anything. If and when he is given the ball wherever he ends up going, I thoroughly believe he will create some incredible moments and leave a lasting legacy that we will talk about for years to come. Plus, some people like to pretend he's old. The guy is only 39. Like my compatriot in Christianity, Keith Lee is just getting into his wrestling prime. And I can only imagine that we're going to be able to sit back soon and bask in his glory. But what do you think? Did WWE fumble the bag with Keith Lee worse than AEW? And in general, what are some of your thoughts about He Who Is Limitless? Do you have any favorite moments? Let me know in the comments down below. And hey ho, while you're headed down that way, be sure to leave the video a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to the channel and like wrestling content like this. I upload a lot of stuff weekly just talking about wrestling, and I enjoy the hobby quite a lot, so there's gonna be something here for you, I'm sure. Anyways, I'm gonna go back to my weekly rewatch of NXT Great American Bash now, but as always, I hope you stay safe, and that was Dylightful.